I love the pool stages. It's the most fun we as rugby fans get every 4 years. Here we have 10 teams competing for 8 slots and 10 more teams chucking everything they have at those big 10, as well as at each other. These games are about underdogs putting in big shows, about mad rugby involving 38 missed tackles and 39 tries. They're about Uruguay overperforming, Japan captivating everyone, Georgia pushing Australia, USA and Tonga pushing France, Canada pushing themselves off a cliff. They're about tries like Golonitsky's as much as they're about tries like Perinara's. And yet, something felt so wrong about this pool stage, because it began with a clash between defending champions New Zealand and the bookies' second favourite, South Africa. This was knockout rugby from the off. And so, as such, there feels like no better time to review a game as tight and tense as anything we'll see this weekend. So, how, way back on the opening weekend, the All Blacks overcome their old foes in their 99th encounter with the Springboks. Part of the upshot of waiting so long to review this game is that I got to see countless comments based on fan assessments of what the Springboks were trying to do. The Rassie Erasmus approach is extremely specific. The Springboks seemingly have protocol for every possible situation an opposition or circumstance could put them in, with their plan being to break out of that. By being prepared for every eventuality, they can create moments nobody was ready for. The best example of this may be to go back to my video on the game between these two teams during the Rugby Championship. Just look at how hard they worked to create just a few inches of space for Cheslin Kolbe. Their whole game is about attempting to create these moments whilst never getting caught out trying. So, let's have a look at the Rassie playbook. The book is divided into a few segments. If the game is tight, let's say there's a score in it either way, they play one way. If the Springboks are notably ahead, they start playing another way. And I'd presume there's a further plan for if they're miles behind as well, but we've not actually seen any team comprehensively smash South Africa in the Erasmus era, so it'd be impossible for me to comment on whether or not he's prepared for this without them playing Uruguay. This is then further, and most importantly, divided into what coaches call zone strategy, which basically just refers to where they are on the field, because the Springboks play very differently depending on where they are. So inside either 22 is reasonably obvious. Inside their own 22, they look to clear, to boot the ball away, to get it out of there. Inside the opposition 22, they look to attack. I'll go into this another time, because the most interesting bit is in the gap between those two. Every single time the Springboks found themselves in that middle third, they reverted to essentially rugby league strategy. They played a few phases. Then, on phase 5 exactly, if they hadn't found any space, they hadn't found anything to do, they weren't going forward at a rate of momentum, they kicked. I'm not exaggerating. Every single time the Springboks were outside either 22 in their game, at phase 5, they set up to hoof it. And virtually every single one of those kicks was contestable. It was to get a big chase in to try and regather or at least force an error, rather than just to pin the opposition back. The aim is just to get themselves into the next zone. The Boks' entire attack is built around the stages of the field, and if the chase doesn't regather, South Africa trust their aggressive defence to prevent them leaking backwards into the previous zone from which they came. But whereas, say, Ireland are programmed very specifically to what Schmidt wants them to do, South Africa are given exactly 5 phases grace to go and have some fun before they revert back to type. And if anyone says their play ever feels undynamic, that's more because most of the team's idea of fun is crunching it up into someone and trying to destroy their ribs in the process. The players basically have a license to play until the moment, the second, it becomes clear they're going nowhere. Whereas Joe Schmidt is always playing the percentages, Rassie Erasmus is basically typing 8008135 into his calculator before wiping it after 5 phases and going back to his algebra. All coaches will be discussing this zone theory with their team, but South Africa built their entire attack on the length of the field. In the middle third, we often see Willie LaRue come in as an additional playmaker, dropping off passes and helping spread the ball wide and bringing forwards onto the ball at pace. Whereas when he's in the 22, he's used far more as an attacking threat himself. The Springboks have a system that gives every individual player a shifting role based on where in the field they are. And if they go 5 phases without the shift taking place, they're not going to hang around trying any longer. They're going to put it in the air. Now, many South African fans took moments out from hounding me to make this video to criticise this as them kicking the ball away far too often or them having no ideas, when actually it's just a way round this ever becoming an issue. Whereas, say, Scotland get caught up in out of the box thinking, South Africa are quite happy to go, no, the lid's on far too tightly on this box and just throw it in the sea. All the justification for this approach you'll ever need is in the first minute of the game. Handré Pollard's penalty from as far back as this game feels, as well as his later drop goal from distance, show that Springboks are capable of scoring points and building a lead anywhere in 2 out of the 4 zones they talk about. It's less important to them that they score every time they're in the opposition territory, and more important that they're always there. Whether they have the ball or not, they know they're one silly infringement away from being able to build this lead and gain points. It's not playing in the right areas at the right times, it's playing in the right areas all the time. However, they weren't the only ones exhibiting a fascinating kicking game. Since Erasmus came in, the Springboks have been renowned for an aggressive out-to-win defence, which basically pelts the ball carrier from outside the eye line before they can do anything about it, aiming to catch them behind the gain line. In the previous Rugby Championship meeting, the All Blacks looked at two means of getting the ball outside this, standing deep and passing around it, and through quick and phase play designed to split and right in their breast of hands. However, in that entire game, the All Blacks did not make one designed attacking kick. Not one, which frankly should have been suspicious. We should have looked into that and noticed this really, because they were saving that strategy for this big un come September. So the All Blacks would often launch play onto the outskirts of the middle of the field, this kind of position. Whereas their attack is built on length, the Springboks defence is designed to make the most of the full width of the pitch. When the line is united like this, it's very easy for them to run their system and force the All Blacks back. So the All Blacks tried to split it. An attacking play designed to be run of this kind of position is awkward for South Africa, as they have to split things and run two aggressive lines rather than just one. And this is where NZ's obsession with the dual playmaker comes into play. The idea is they create the split in a rush defence, and then they have a class fly half on either side able to make decisions, meaning both defensive lines have to actually really think. Normally a split field like this is fairly easy to defend. One side is stacked with a playmaker and the other side has just options to carry and maybe a winger. Having a 10 assessing either side opened up a whole new world of options. This then led to situations in which the All Blacks could make more meterage or find more space than usual, thanks to South Africa having to rub their tummy on one side of the ruck and pat their head on the other. But it also opened up space for the aforementioned kicking game, which led directly to the try for George Bridge. With the South African wingers so keen to buy it in, the Blacks would tempt them up with the split field position, forcing them to adjust, then from the centre of the pitch, pin a narrow cross-field kick in behind. Whereas most cross kicks are designed to actually go cross-field, the All Blacks only kicked across half of it, so the winger wouldn't be able to adjust. Last autumn, it felt clear the All Blacks were trying different things, a tactical kicking game, attempting to drop goals, blah, 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 blah. And then the Rugby Championship felt to me like they were trying to slot these two together. It was some kind of mad, hyper-dynamic jigsaw, but they still had moments where they couldn't quite find the corner pieces of this jigsaw and know quite where to start. However, by half time it felt clear to me that this was only partly true. Yes, the All Blacks had been trying to slot their experimental northern style onto their attacking game, but they'd been doing it not quite with one hand behind their back, but certainly a few fingers folded inwards. They destroyed Australia and managed to draw against the Springbok side, seemingly showing far more of its hand than they were, whilst holding back their entire kicking game. There's something terrifying about the George Bridge try in fullness. They've worked the ball into position runner play Hansen has clearly identified would work months ago, and then executed off-the-cuff rugby to a genuinely pretty much perfect ideal. The All Blacks may not have looked as convincing in the last year as in 2015, but it's starting to look like this was just a different approach. Whereas before they were just destroying everyone and everything they could in the run-up, this time it may be that they're conserving firepower for later on. And this in turn then becomes where the draw gets really interesting, because New Zealand probably went into this tournament with only really two teams holding any fear over them, and they're going to need to beat both of them to even reach the semi-finals. If the All Blacks are sitting on strategies, you can probably imagine they looked at the draw and thought, well, we'll play Scotland or Japan, and therefore we can beat them without having to lean too heavily into that stockpile. But Ireland, who've beaten them twice in the last 3 games, this may force them to reach into the Fernie secrets earlier than intended. Even if they take them past Ireland, you then have to ask at what cost. If Hansen's plan involved holding things back, it may be that facing both sets of green boys who have lost to Japan forces him to show the likes of Jones, Gatland and Erasmus his hand and give them an extra week to work out how to overcome it. I'm, of course, massively speculating, but that's because after the chuck about nonsense we've had, we're into the real stuff. This weekend marks the start of 3 weeks of the highest caliber rugby we'll see for 4 years. These are the 8 best teams in the world not called Uruguay, having built, trained, prepared and aimed to peak for this very moment, all at the same point of preparation, with only one goal. Every margin this weekend is going to be so tight, so small, so hard-earned. If there's anything in any of these mad theories, we'll find out this weekend. And I, for one, cannot wait. And you know why? Because I love the quarterfinals. I am back in the UK, the UK, which is unfortunate and really kind of actually quite cold. But you know, the tea I don't need to ration, so that's one positive. You may have seen, obviously that was from the opening weekend. I was trying to get that up before the quarterfinals. Unfortunately I couldn't. I just had so much going on, including the travelling and the jet lag and the blah 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 blah. So I'm now going to try and catch up on the quarterfinals. I'm going to focus on those. I'm going to prioritise the New Zealand game. That's going to be first. Then I'm going to look at the Wales, France and the game between South Africa and Japan. England, Australia, I'm going to try and get through all of them this week, but that'll be the one that most likely misses out, just because Not out of sheer bias against the two, as everyone will accuse me of, but just because I think that was the game that went closest to how I was expecting it to go. So I'm going to put that one last. I do intend to come back and get through every single game. So that includes the games of the pool stages I missed. So Wales, Fiji I missed. Japan, Scotland I obviously missed. I'm going to do that probably after the tournament now. I'm going to do that as like a bonus after we've done. And all the others, so Ireland, Scotland, there's a few of the smaller games, so Scotland, Russia I missed, Namibia against the All Blacks, etc. I'm going to catch up on after the tournament now. That's going to be the way I do it, or perhaps in the week leading up to the final, because there's going to be light of just the 2 games. If I haven't got the other quarterfinals done by the time I get to the semi-finals, I'll most likely move on to focus on those, unless it's like this situation where I've got it mostly done, but I just polish it off on the Monday as it is still now. Unbelievable that World game was just yesterday. Wow. So yeah, that's basically what I'm doing with the next couple of weeks. I'm trying to catch up on everything I can. And as I say, I am going to get through all 45 as it turned out to be the 3 cancelled games. Eventually, I'm going to make sure I get through all of them before I eventually collapse and build the Lego Death Star I stress bought over there, the side over there.